But this time he stopped it and he said, I'm going to play this song and I want y'all to lose your mind. And we knew what was coming. He hit Single Ladies. It could have been like the Messiah had returned. People lost their minds. And then he played it again.
Hello, my name is Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, the podcast that is all about lost queer spaces. Only it's not just about that. It is about the people who drank there and danced there and fell in love there. Every week I talk to a different person and I find out what relationship that they had with a particular queer space and how it helped to shape the person that they've become. Quick question for you. Are you one of those people who remembers where they were and how they reacted when they found out about momentous historical moments? Like, for instance, do you remember where you were on September 11? Or do you remember where you were when you first heard about this new bug going around called COVID-19? Or, more importantly, do you remember the very first time that you heard Single Ladies by Beyonce played in a club? Well, if that final momentous occasion resonates with you at all, then I think you are going to get a kick out of this week's chat. I sat down with the drag and fashion designer and also contestant on the reality TV show So Fierce, Terrence O'Brian Henderson, who took us on a journey to a club called Club Odyssey, which was in Lexington, North Carolina. Now, for Terrence, Club Odyssey was this really magical space that helped him to push some of the boundaries that were holding him back. Like, for instance, it was here that he rediscovered his love of dance and movement, and he also explored his gender expression, and he learned to move past some of the more negative preconceptions he had about the queer community that were baked into him as a little child. I love this chat because it was a reminder to me to continuously practice the fine art of not giving a fuck. But as well as that, I learned about the dedication, sheer dedication that's required to learn complex Beyonce choreography. And there are a lot of Beyonce songs out there, just so you know. And I also got some really handy advice about the perils of wearing non-stretch pants while dropping low on the dance floor. And I think you probably already know how that particular story goes. But let's get into it and find out more. What is that like, living somewhere that's very politically conservative and being like, maybe I'm not welcome?
It is the weirdest thing because in Lexington, where I grew up, my high school was one of the most diverse spaces I've ever been in. My town, the town itself, and North Carolina, is an incredibly diverse state. And of course, when you're in high school and you're at school, and even back in those days, yeah, kids would be kind of mean and rude. And I'd be like, oh, you're going to be unsuccessful when you grow up. And they are unsuccessful. But
Have you been stalking them on the internet? Is that how
I
you
know
know?
they try to add me every once in a while. And I'm like, oh, no, that's gross. I didn't like you then. Why would I like you now? But it's funny because North Carolina itself, usually the governor of the state is liberal or Democrat, but the state itself in the presidential election usually goes Republican. So there's a lot of,
Okay.
it's a very weird state. Unfortunately, and I'll say this, most of the sexuality jabs or the homophobia I got from that community came from people who were also black and brown.
Yeah.
But the racism, of course, I got from queer people. So it was very, very strange. It was very strange. Yeah, it was
Ah,
very strange.
yeah. Because I was going to say, like, you talked about your school being diverse, but that doesn't, to me, mean that it's straight away liberal as a result of being diverse.
Yeah, no.
So how have you navigated those two identities through your life? And sorry, we're going straight into this. Like, tell me about being black and queer.
Yeah, yeah, let's do it. You navigate it by understanding that I first understand that as a black queer male, my cousin who I grew up with is a black gay female, and we
Mhm.
instantly have different experiences. And there's certain things that I was able to do and able to not get away with that she couldn't
Mm-mm.
because people treat everyone different. So I had to understand that I still had some sort of privilege in the space because I was male. And being a male, you have a certain privilege in the black community. Being queer and sort of like experiencing the world and with a code differently from non-queer black males, I sort of have a privilege of not being the one that may get profiled by the police, because I'm
Okay.
wearing,
Yeah.
I'm wearing a pride T-shirt, so they might not go, okay, no, oh, all he has is a dildo in his pants, you know what I mean? So those
Just
kind of
one.
just two or three, man. And my sounding kit, I always keep a sounding kit with me. I'm gonna be plugging those. I have a sounding kit line coming out, but um, no. So I had to understand those privilege, and then the things that I had to work against. And my time in Lexington, North Carolina, I spent about 7 8 years bartending, and there I learned how to juggle and talk and communicate with different people because I had people who were older and white and came from spaces that maybe weren't necessarily most welcoming of queer or black people. And I had black people, black guys who didn't necessarily like the fact that I was queer. So I had to learn how to jest and volley and communicate. And I,
Code
the
switch.
rest is history. Code, yeah, it's a lot of code switching. It's a lot of code switching. I'm just now finding out like how I actually go, but yeah, it's a lot of
How
code switching.
comfortable are you with code switching, or do you find it draining?
It's become a part of the experience of this lifetime. So
Mm.
I see it sometimes as a superpower or a privilege because I can kiki with my girls and then go into a room and be able to impress people who make 3 or 4 times amount of money I make, So it can be exhausting, but at the end of the day, like everyone who doesn't make the rules has to do it. And I mean, it's just a part of the game. So I've learned to understand the experience. And, it sucks, but also, it's like putting on a mask, putting on a different mask to try to, to get the best out of the situation. So adaptability.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with that, but it's not as though you're putting on the mask because you have a choice.
Hmm.
Or if you
Hmm.
do have a choice, it's like a superficial choice. Like
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
oh, I can be completely excluded from this conversation, or I can put on this persona and
yeah,
be accepted for this brief encounter.
yeah. It's tricky.
Yeah, I always, I think like when I was younger, I was more like okay with it because I just didn't really know who I was. And I was just
Hmm.
like, okay, well, I'll be in this situation and I'll be who they want me to be in this situation, or at least who I think they want me to be in this situation. And as I get older and I understand who I am more, and I understand the compromises that are involved with having to do that and having to talk in a different way or dim down certain parts of my personality, I think I'm just angry about it.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. I understand that vibe because there are times where I'm even exhausted to even go there. Like I don't even want to talk right now because I don't want to have to do that. But for me, I think I'm starting to really understand who I am, and the code switching doesn't change that. That just allows me to
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
navigate because I still because if I didn't know who I was, then it becomes a little bit more jarring. But because I know that, like I said, I've started to accept that I'm an anxious person. I crave security. Like there's certain things you just start to accept, and I think
Yeah.
I've just sort of accepted that little bit of that charm of that kind of works. And I like being able to communicate in different groups in different ways. because I go to conventions for cosplay and anime, and that's a different kind of verbiage. And then fashion with the fashion girls, that's a different kind of verbiage. And then I want them just hanging
These
out,
don't
or
sound like wildly different audiences to
yeah,
me.
they are. They are. I can't
They're
talk
not
to
investment bankers.
the same people I'm talking to about Vivian Westwood. I can't bring up Sailor Moon. It becomes really tricky.
What about Sailor Uranus? They'd be down with that, I think.
Uranus. Uranus.
Well, and so you don't ever feel like, oh, the fuck am I doing this for?
Sometimes, but also the amount of actual code that comes through is getting less and less. So
Okay.
now I'm activated no matter what. There's just certain words I won't say in mixed company, or certain I might not bring up dildos. But yeah, no, it doesn't really bother me as much. It doesn't really bother me as much. Yeah, maybe that's the experience that I've had of being black and being like, oh well, I have to understand how my presence affects a space, and it's always been that way. Or queer, it's always been that way.
Yeah.
In my mind, when I go shopping, I still do the thing where, and it's so crazy and it's so weird, but I don't follow too closely behind somebody because I don't want them to think that, you know,
Oh,
yeah. So it's little mental things like that that my mom taught me, or just ingrained. So I mean, and I think I have to accept this as the experience,
yeah.
and worry about the other things right now. So
Yeah. So shall we go back in time then?
let's go back in time.
So mid noughties ish,
Two
right?
thousands, no 2000s.
Yeah, mid noughties.
Oh,
Yes.
is that what they call it now?
What? So you just call it 2000s?
Yeah, I'm one of those girls that
They're
call it.
naughty, noughts.
Oh,
They're
the
noughts.
knots. Oh, no.
No,
Is it the
okay.
aughts? I think
No,
people
I
call
don't
it the
like that one.
oats. Yeah, no, I don't know.
Oh,
Well, if you want to
oats,
call it
filling
the,
my oats.
yeah, filling my oats in the ooze. I just call it the 2000 era. I mean, we could say it's the era of Lady Gaga and Beyonce because that
That's
was
it.
the,
Well,
what is it?
anyway, so mid thousands. Is that what we've
hmm
settled on?
Yeah,
Oh, that
yeah.
doesn't feel right. Mid
No,
thousands.
the
The
O's.
2000s. Is that
The
two?
2000s. I like that.
Okay, so the 2000s. Let's go back to the 2000s. Let's go back to Club Odyssey.
Club Odyssey.
What are the first things you think of when I say Club Odyssey?
Freedom. Just so much freedom. Club Odyssey was the only club I've ever been to in my life where it was a packed house and it was every color, every sexuality, every gender. Everybody went to Club Odyssey. Heterosexuals went there, had a ball. Queer people went there, had a ball. The trans community went there. Drag queens went there, like because there were drag queen performances. And it was interesting because Club Odyssey had two sides. One was we called it
Segregation.
the black side, and the other side was called the white side, and it is what it is. People, that's what we called it. But one side played just urban hip hop, top 40s, dance, hall music.
Uh-huh.
The other side played techno, club beats, and it had this big stage where the drag queens could perform. So it was segregated in a sense of music, not necessarily race, because you would see everybody on every side. You would see the drag queens come
So how
to
did
the
they get
urban
their
side.
names then?
I called them that because the DJ and the mixers on the urban side were black, and then the DJ on and the mixers were white on the white side. But no, so that's what I think about club freedom, absolute fucking freedom. It was just so beautiful, and I ripped my pants so many times. Just ripped my pants.
Do you want to elaborate on that sentence?
Yeah. There's this song that came out called "Pop, Lock, and Drop It." You remember that "Pop, Lock, and
Okay.
Drop It"?
Uh-huh.
And I would always go to "Pop, Lock, and Drop It," and I would drop it on that first one, and poof, my booty would come out, and it would
And you
split.
never learnt your lesson, just every single
No, I
time,
listen. You can't hear "Pop, Lock, and Drop It"
without dropping it. Yeah.
without dropping it.
What is popping it?
Pop when you pop your booty. Pop,
Oh, okay.
lock, yeah.
And lock is what?
Lock is when you do your leg like this, like you're locking a key Locking a door with your foot. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I might practice this later.
Practice it.
Um.
Be careful. The knees, my knees, mm-mm. I do it with my hands now.
So, Club Odyssey. Do you
Hmm.
remember how you heard about it as a place? How you were first introduced to it?
The weirdest thing, and this is crazy. And maybe I think this might be maybe the first in on their series. I was 16, 17. My mom came home one night and was like, I went to the craziest place. So I heard about Club Odyssey from my mom.
Aww.
Yeah, yeah. So she had a friend who was um, not necessarily queer, but like sort of a really powerful woman who would do whatever she wanted to do. And she took my mom to Club Odyssey. And I remember my mom coming home being like, it was the craziest place. She thought it was evil. And I was like, it's not evil, mom. It's just drag queens. Um,
Oh, what? So when she was saying crazy, she wasn't like, "Wow, I had the best time." She was like, "Oh gosh."
she was like, oh gosh. Because my mom went through this phase of before I really came out and became fully who I was, she was still unsure about like the queer world.
The
And then
gays.
once I came out and started really having deep conversations with her, then she let all that shit go and she was down for, standing and being an ally. But it was tricky at first. So
Ah. Well, and so would she be slightly homophobic in front of you when you were growing up?
it was more so other family members, and I think she was protecting me because she wasn't sure. And then I think maybe there's a certain amount of like, this can't possibly be, or like, he's not gay, he's not gay, he's just sensitive. Because I was an artist, so
He's
I,
gonna grow out of it. Yeah.
yeah, like, because I was always at home by myself. Well, not by myself, but she didn't let me play with other kids.
Oh, why not?
Well, we can. I'm working on that with my therapist, but there were a few. I don't know what it was in my childhood that made it seem like I was a target of some kind, but I remember distinctly a few times where it could have been bad for me because I think I was sort of feminine esque. And so people who were unsure about themselves sort of like looked at me and said,
Zeroed in on that.
yeah, and wanted to either explore that. And I'm just being me. There's nothing there. And so I think when I remember in my childhood, there's a few times where I was sort of the target of someone else's interests when I was just there to play with Legos, and then that parent would be
Wait, wait,
like,
wait, wait,
"Oh,
wait. So, wait. Interest.
yeah, I'm trying to be PC.
Are you saying
I'm
that
trying
they
to be
were bullying you or they were hitting on you?
hitting on me, yeah, hitting on me, and bullying, but mostly there's a few times where I remember I just wanted to be a kid, and the person or someone a bit older than me wanted to
Oh,
do,
shit.
yeah, wanted to explore something else, and I would be like, I don't know why we're doing this. And then like the parent would come in and be like, "Oh, I'm the problem." And it's like, "Well, I'm not. He
Yeah,
is."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think that sort of made my mom be very protective of me. And my mom had dealt with abuse as well. Being a black woman, she
Uh-huh.
she had dealt with it, and she really so she circled in. She was like, "Circle the wagons. You don't go anywhere." But I think she was
Ah.
sort of afraid because she had friends who lost their life due to AIDS and HIV, and so I think she was guarded. She was like, maybe I can like
Yeah.
protect him from everything, and he'll just one day marry a woman. But she got past that, so real interesting.
What age did you come out to her at?
Want to say 18, 17, 18, I think, yeah. Because I came out mostly as bisexual, and to be fair, I am, if you want to break it down, androsexual, but I can sit in bisexual or pansexual still to this
Okay.
day. So
Let's explain androsexual to our dear listeners. It's when you're
yeah,
attracted to the person and not the parts. Is that right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
It's
cool.
so it's on a spectrum of masculinity, and
Uh-huh.
it doesn't matter what their gender identity is. So there's been like butch lesbians. I've been like, I'm in love with you.
And has that been reciprocated?
No, I try to put my boobs together. Like, no, I try. Well, I have actually. It's funny. All the girls I've dated in my life, and I haven't dated a cis female since like my early 20s.
Uh-huh.
But I think people saw it as, oh, because they were a little more. stocky and butch and more not feminine, people thought, oh, you're just gay. And it was like, oh, okay, maybe I am. And it wasn't that. I realized, this was like a year ago. It's like, oh, no, no, I'm attracted to that woman. I'm attracted to a woman with a short haircut and piercings and a fresh pair of khakis.
And Birkenstocks
Oh,
or Doc
Birkenstocks.
Martens. Anyway, but back.
Oh,
So you came out to her as bisexual, and how did
yeah.
that conversation go?
Um, as with most parents, for her, it was like, I understand. I want you to be happy. I want you to be
Hmm.
loved, and I love you regardless. So her and my father, surprisingly, my father was even more supportive because I still had to talk my mom into like why we should get married, why we should be able to adopt. But my dad was actually like, cool, all right, great, clean your room.
Okay, so then let's go back another step. She's come home from Club Odyssey and she said, I went to this place and
Yeah,
holy hell, what the hell, what just happened? So that's how you found out about it.
yeah.
How long from then until you ventured through the doors yourself?
Oh, I was probably like 19, 20, because I didn't start drinking until I was 21. So I hadn't drank. I was really 18, 19, 20. Invested heavily in like creating stuff. So it was
Hmm.
like a period where I actually just stayed home all the time, very to myself. And I was always drawing, always working on stuff. And then 21, 22, when I started entering out and started like bartending, that's when I started drinking. And then when I went to the first to club, I don't remember the first time, but I think I went to
Okay.
the club at first like 20,
But and
21.
so was that because you just didn't have any interest in going out, or there was a fear that was holding you back? Or a
Um,
third option? I've just given you two options. I don't know why.
it could have been a fear. It could have been just a why go? Why bother going? I was definitely that introvert. I was
Hmm.
that person who was like, I'd rather not be bothered. I'd rather be at home. And then it was no, I think I remember the first time I went, I had a friend who lived around the corner and she wanted to go. And I was like, okay, let's go. And so me and her hopped in my dad's car and we picked up another friend and
Okay.
we went and
But so it's all still a bit fuzzy,
it's all fuzzy.
but if you can think about the first, the second, the third, or the first handful of times that you went there, what's the feeling when you go through that door?
I just remember going through the door and feeling now I can be like absolutely 100% comfortable. I think that's the thing now that I'm missing from most clubs now because again I revel in security. So if there's not a metal detector, I don't feel comfortable wherever we are.
Really?
Yeah, it's just a thing. I'm really weird like that. But they had like security guards meddling you down, and I remember after that point and seeing like these beautiful queer faces, and I remember like the first person to greet us was feminine and in love with their queer identity, and it was beautiful. And I was like, oh, because at that point, like you hadn't you see them on TV, but you hadn't seen it, and I was like, oh wow, I can really be myself. And then like next to me is a drag queen,
Hmm.
giving her ID, getting in,
How do you
and
ID a drag queen?
when they do a dip at the door, like as soon as they walk in the door, they go,
No, but if you look at their driving license, you'll be like,
yeah,
this is clearly not you.
this is clearly not you. But even then, they could have been like, okay, go in. You look old enough. Have at it. But yeah, it just you would go and I would just feel like okay, I can be completely fine and free, and I can say or move and dance. And I didn't realize how much I loved dancing because when I was a
Ah.
kid, I loved dancing.
Hmm.
And then you start to grow up, and then the societal pressures of being a teenager, and everyone hates me, and I'm puberty and acne, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
being queer, like you're like, oh, I can't dance, and
Don't look
then
at me.
don't look at me. And then you go, oh, it's okay that people look at me. It's okay to dance. It's okay to celebrate. So I think that was the connection of like, and I hate it because my partner grew up Mormon and never experienced that. And I hate even talking about it because it feels like this wonderful privilege I got to open up inside of a club. So
Ah,
yeah.
but isn't it interesting the magic of dancing and convening and being in a space with people where you're like letting go? And like you
Yeah.
get to do that when you're a little kid because you're basically in a daycare center where they're like, how are we going to keep these kids entertained and how are we going to like get them to drain their energy? I know what, everyone dance. And then you stop doing that, like when you're in high school or whatever, and then you
Hmm.
start again.
Yeah.
But then at some point you just stop again. Like,
We need to
how do
dance.
we dance
We need
more?
to dance more.
Yeah.
We need to dance more. Our bodies need to move and need to feel the and I still like when I'm working, I have on Beyonce or I have on Spice Girls. And if a song hits me, I'll stand up and like, and I don't have any fear of that anymore. Like during this time, because and I'll say this, and you would learn the choreography to whatever song, and then when that song would come on, the girls would part, and the girls that know the routine would hit the floor. And like that just taught me like it's okay to move your body. Like it's so crazy how we don't. I mean, my partner, I have to like shake it out of him to get him to move his body. And when he does, he's like, "Wow, this is wonderful." Like,
So
yeah,
how
shake your
many
butt.
dance routines were you learning in a week?
I was hitting the ones and twos. The one that you needed to know I'll tell a little story. I was there the first night they ever played Single Ladies. Okay. And it was a moment. Now it was a moment because we would go so often. I knew his set list. I knew like the song that would go into the next song and then the
Oh,
next
yeah,
song.
yeah.
And he would go to Get Me Bodied, and Get Me Bodied would go into like a Rihanna song. But this time he stopped it and he said, "I'm going to play this song, and I want y'all to lose your mind." And we knew it was coming. He hit Single Ladies. It could have been like the Messiah had returned. People lost their minds. And then he played it again. But I had to learn so I would go home, learn the Single Ladies dance. I know the dance to this day. And we would do it in the club. So it would be crazy because you would hear the boom, 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 and then people would start clearing. If you didn't know the word, you better get the fuck out of the way, girl, because we're gonna hit the full count. So I would learn that stuff, and then there would be like people would learn routines. They would love to do that. So I would love watching these beautiful black men who were like wearing big earrings and all this jewelry and all this hair, who would go and practice at home and come and learn the routine. It was similar to like the ballroom scene in New
Yeah,
York.
yeah.
But it wasn't that. I mean, I don't think they were houses, but they would do that, and they would roam in posses and have matching outfits sometimes, and it was just so
Oh.
beautiful, so beautiful.
But is that not annoying when there are people in the club who are cooler than you?
I didn't say that. They were not cool.
Well, in the way you're explaining them.
I was a solo act, and they were groups, so that's fine. Mariah Carey, TLC.
Well, okay. But how many times did you clear the dance floor?
Yeah, to be fair, I was envious of the groups they roamed in because I looked at my crew and I was like, some of y'all can't catch the beat. So I don't have anybody. I don't have anybody to do the dance floor with me.
No. Anyway, actually, just whilst we're here, really quickly, favorite Beyonce song?
I'm gonna pick two songs.
It's kind of cheating, but okay.
Well, right now my favorite Beyonce song is from the Cowboy Carter album, and that's either American Requiem or Flamenco. Um, I think American Requiem is probably one of the greatest songs I've ever heard in my life. But I think if I had to say like my favorite Beyonce song, you could put it on right now. Honestly, because of the experience I lived in, is Single Ladies. Because I just remember something changed around that time, and it really connects to that moment. I think that's when I started like myself putting on makeup and putting on wigs and putting on heels, and I started exploring my gender expression. And of course, I am a man and I'm cis male, but that's when I started like doing that and wearing stuff. So
Well, and so the song happened to be out at the time that that was happening, or something about
yeah,
that
and the
song.
club space, yeah, and
Okay.
that club space and then I remember learning it and being like, oh, I want to try doing this in heels and like getting a pair of heels and getting. So it's a part of this whole like that chapter, the beginning chapter would start with like the single ladies.
So, so Club Odyssey, like it was this time that Oh, I'm about to give you the answer before I ask you my question, actually. So just scrap that. So, Club Odyssey, what do you think it taught you about yourself?
Well, there's a few things. First thing it taught me was that regardless of what my mother had put in my head about this place being like a den of sin and debauchery, that's not what it was. It was a bunch of queer and non-queer people expressing themselves and celebrating all the differences they are, and that sometimes you have to be in a space for yourself to understand what that space is. And I think, as much as I love my mother and wish she rests in peace and in power, sometimes we get from our parents this sort of like, these are the places you don't need to be in, or these are places that, like, my mom was very much that. She was very protective. And I remember thinking the first time I went, like, oh, my mom said that this place was awful. I'm probably going to catch something, or like,
Hmm.
like all the negative feelings that she had about the place were imprinted onto me. And the first time I was in there, all those just fell away. And I realized, like, oh, I love my mother and I can love her and understand her wisdom, but I don't have to be subject to her experience. Like, that's her.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
me. So that was the first thing I learned. The second thing I got from it was dancing again. Dancing in a club, whether you're drunk, on a party drug, which I don't do, but if you do it, that's your life, you know, and just feeling the music and feeling the vibe and looking in the mirror and seeing your body move and understanding, like, this is fine.
Hmm. It's more than fine.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's
Mm.
what you need to be. Um, and the fashion stuff, because I do fashion. Um,
Oh,
the
you do?
third thing was, yeah, yeah. The third thing was seeing the expression and the combination they made, because sportswear, like streetwear in American markets, is usually taking things that don't belong to you and a sense weren't made for you, and creating a new conversation within yourself and your community. So seeing the girls, like, I remember there's this one girl who would wear like rubber rain boots in the club. It's not raining. It's not raining. And he would
Ah.
have this red bag that was the same color, and he would walk around and be dancing with in his rain boots and his. But I was like, oh, you get to do what you want to fucking do. So those things, those three things, taught me that. Yeah, yeah, it taught me. I mean, that time, and I hate it because you don't remember the last time you do something, and I
Yeah.
don't remember the last time I exited that club knowing that I was never going to go back. Um, and I remember the sign was a unicorn, like, had a unicorn on it, because that was the whole idea. Was it was an Odyssey, you know. And I just remember, just it changed me. Well, it allowed me to change. I will say that it allowed me to change. So,
So what's the story behind it closing?
ooh, I think it was. I think the owner was doing something with money that wasn't supposed to be done. I think it's that case that, yeah, embezzlement or some kind. And here's the interesting thing. So it closed down for about 2 years, and then someone came in and reopened it, tried to
Uh-huh.
reopen it. But at that point, the crowds had sort of like
Moved on.
dispersed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it had the same, pretty much the same layout and the same like sort of vibe, but it never got to back where it was. And
Mm.
that's just the nature of the beast. Those moments happen, and then,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating.
yeah. And I think that's the beautiful thing about this Lost Spaces podcast is this, like, we were there, you know, and we can still be there because we have those memories, but that space isn't, because nothing's permanent. Everything's temporary.
Mm.
But what's not is the change that it created, and that's the thing I love about what you do here, is that it's sharing those things.
Oh, that's such a good way of putting it. I might steal that.
You can have it.
Thank you. Um, well, and so final question from me. If you look back on that Terrence who first went there and started to explore and push his own boundaries and figure himself out, what advice would you give him?
Wear stretch pants when you're out walking around it.
Or bring
So
a
many.
small sewing kit?
Yes, yes. Or just don't wear pants. Um, what I would say to that person is, revel in this. Like, really let go. Because even then, like, I could have came more and drag, or I could have, danced even more, or I could have, like, maybe not drink as much and not have a hangover and throw up places, like, um, but I would say I think I got the most out of it. I got the most out of it because I was open to it. And um, remember the last time you left. Like, remember that moment. Like, look back real quick and just look at it and say goodbye. So, but I think I got the most out of it. Yeah.
Cherish it.
Yeah.
That's it for another week. If you loved hearing Terrence's story, then make sure you give him a little follow on Instagram and let him know. He can be found at The Black Bard. I am also on social media, if I haven't told you that 239 times already, and you can find me on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok at Lost Spaces Pod. Thank you again for allowing me into your ears this week, and I will see you in 7 days.